Welcome back to Joe's Son of Boxing. Rolando Romero, Rolly himself, defends his WBA super lightweight title that he won so impressively against Ismael Barroso. He defends it against ISAAC Pitbull Cruz. And this is on the 30th of March. Okay, so let's talk about the much maligned Rolly to start with. A lot of people don't have a high opinion of Rolly. They say he's, one of the worst champions in boxing, probably because of the way that he beat Barroso. But the criticisms actually predate that, and some of the criticisms are valid because he's clearly got flaws in his game, especially defensively. But I don't think he's as bad as people say. I think he does have some ability, whether it's world class or not. I would put him as a top 20 guy, but he's got this belt. We'll come to that in a minute. He's 28 years old now. He's an orthodox fighter, and he's got 15 wins, 13 KOs, so a high knockout percentage, and he's got one defeat, which was 2 fights ago, and that was to Tank Davis. He got stopped in 6 rounds. Now, let's play devil's advocate, even if you don't think much of Rolly. Let's go back to 2021 and the Anthony Yigit fight. Now, Yigit is a pretty decent gatekeeper type, and he's a tough guy. He'll take his lumps and he won't quit. He got stopped in 7 rounds by Rolly, and Rolly was, if he didn't win all the rounds, he certainly won most of them against a guy who is, a pretty decent fighter. I mean, Yigit was down, I think, twice, 5th and a 7th. Rolly had a point taken off for, I think he was hitting on the break. And he can be a little bit of a dirty sod, Rolly. But that one, I thought that wasn't a bad win. It wasn't a bad performance. He has looked, pretty damn terrible in some fights. But he does have wins over previously undefeated fighters. Artur's Amatovs, he beat him. He was undefeated. He's only 5-0, but he was still undefeated. And Rolly stopped him in 2 rounds, and then he fought Jackson Martinez, who was undefeated in 19, won a unanimous 12-round decision. So he went the distance as well. He's done the 12 rounds. I don't think he is quite as bad as people say. Defensively, he's very sort of loose and slack. He very much likes to come forward and have a punch-up with you. Someone like Tank Davis is able to time him, the knockout was a timed left hook, perfectly timed, which Rolly sort of stepped into almost, kind of sort of half-committed fistic suicide, you might say. But even in that fight, even the Tank fight, Rolly was, he was doing some work. Early on, Tank was just having a look at him and waiting, and Tank was in no way, no shape or form perturbed by it. But Rolly was coming forward, when people ridicule fighters, these are people that get in the ring and do things that I certainly couldn't do. So I'm a little bit sort of loath to sort of really take the piss. Rolly's got the guts to get in there, so I'm going to give him a little bit of respect there. Now, the one fight that really does bear taking the piss out of is the Ismael Barroso fight, because Rolly got floored in that fight by Barroso. Barroso looks like he's about 80 years old. He's got these very old features. His ears stick out, gives him that sort of FA Cup look. But he's not. He says he's 41. He's had a hard life if he's only 41. I look younger than him, and I'm close to 69, 50. But Barroso came back from that defeat to stop Ahara Davis in 1 round, and he's actually the interim WBA champ. So really they should be having a rematch, and certainly Barroso earned the rematch against Rolly, because the stoppage was one of the worst you're ever going to see. I don't know who was winning that fight on points. I think the judges had Rolly up. I know, did they? No, I think actually, come to think of it, I'm doing this off memory, but Israel Barroso, I think, might have been leading. he should have been leading because I thought he was winning the fight. And he'd had, like I say, he'd had Rolly on the floor. But then in that 9th round, there was this exchange, and Barroso was covering up. Rolly was letting his hands go. Rolly never fires what you might call educated punches. It's always sort of salvos of, left, right, and it's almost like he's just aiming for a general target. There's no real method to what he's doing. And Barroso was slipping and sliding, 1 or 2 landed, no big deal. He skated across the ring. He wasn't on rubber legs. But he was in defensive mode. And Tony Weeks stepped in and stopped it. And it was such a bad stoppage that people have said, the fix was in and all this sort of thing. I don't go down that path. And I'm not saying that's impossible. It is possible. But I think it was just a really awful. It was just a really awful stoppage. I'm going to say, okay, it wasn't corruption. It was incompetence. But you may have a different view. I don't know. So, but talking to Barroso, of course, like I say, he says he's 41. British fans will know him. If you go back to 2016, so 8 years ago, he fought Anthony Crolla and got stopped in 7 rounds. And that was for the WBA lightweight title, the division below. And Barroso, he looked, even in that fight, he looked sort of decent, but okay, he does hit hard, Barroso. I'll give him that. In 25 wins, he's got 23 KOs. He's got 4 defeats, 3 by stoppage as well, so he can be stopped throwing out the Rolly fight. He has been stopped, but obviously Crolla was one that stopped him. But since then, he's sort of just trod water. He lost a couple of fights, 1 by stoppage. Since then, that was both those defeats were in 2018. I think there was only 2 fights of 2018. Then he went on a sort of winning run, but winning run's too elaborate a phrase. I mean, he had a couple of fights in 2019, and then he didn't box in 2020. I think he fought once in 2021, and this is against relatively obscure opposition. By the way, the defeat in 2018 was to a guy who was only 4-0. And that was one of those intercontinental belts. Barroso is liked by the WBA. He's always fighting for their belts. And sure enough, in 2023, he got that shot for what was a vacant WBA super lightweight title, and he controversially got stopped. Since then, he come back with the O'Hara Davis win. But yeah, Barroso is what he is. I mean. Anyway, why am I talking about Barroso? I should really be talking about ISAAC CRUZ, shouldn't I? Because he's the one facing Romero. It's just that really sticks in my mind as such a horrible fight, that Barroso stoppage against Rolly. But anyway, getting back to the original point of the video, Romero against ISAAC CRUZ, I think CRUZ is deservedly the favourite. CRUZ has 25 wins, 17 KOs. He's got 2 defeats. And he did well against Tank Davis. A few people said he won. I wasn't one of them. I thought it was close. I thought, he made a good fight of it, but I thought Davis edged it. He also suffered a unanimous 8-round decision defeat back in 2016 when he was coming up. It was considered a bit of an upset, I think. Lost his unbeaten record. There's a draw in there somewhere, I think. I can't remember what the draw was. But I do feel that, even though CRUZ, he does have like a 5-round win over Yuriorkis Gamboa, that was back in 2022. Gamboa was completely finished at that point. In fact, that was the fight after the Davis fight, which was in 2021. And since then, he's had a couple of fights. Eduardo Ramirez, I think he stopped him in 2 rounds and picked up a WBC silver belt, whatever that is. And then he fought Giovanni Cabrera in his last fight and could only win a split decision. Now, I thought he won that fight, but it was close, and the judges' cards reflected that. I thought Cabrera was doing work that probably wasn't flashy, but was picking up points. No doubt CRUZ seemed to hit harder. CRUZ, of course, from Mexico, an orthodox fighter. Quite a short guy, actually, only 5'4", hence the Pitbull name. Romero, taller man, 5'8". You can see it when they do face-to-faces. He's so much taller. He's only 28. Orthodox fighter. look, Rolly knows one way to fight, and that's come forward and sling a lot of punches and look, try and put meat on every punch and knock the guy out. Cruz, another come forward fighter. I think for as long as it lasts, this will be an entertaining one. But it strikes me that Cruz is physically so much stronger than Rolly. And Rolly Romero, if ever there's an opponent where he needs to be boxing sensibly on the back foot and using lots of lateral movement and giving angles, it's going to be this fight. But is he capable of doing that? Does he ever do that? Not really, not from what I've seen. Not often anyway. I mean, Pitbull, okay, his last fight was a split decision win. By the way, Giovanni Cabrera was undefeated in 21. No defeats, no draws. So a split decision win against an undefeated guy, even though it's close, isn't a bad result. But, he can be outboxed and he can be outworked, but he can't be sort of out-toughed, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of, he uses physical strength well, and he is thinking in there as well. He's not the quickest guy, but he's got that sort of caveman image, but there's a bit more savvy to him than he's not what you call a crude slugger. But having said that, maybe he should turn crude slugger against Rolly, because I don't see Rolly suddenly sort of acquiring a great ring IQ and boxing and lots of slick stuff and suddenly turned into Sugar Ray Leonard. That ain't going to happen. So maybe Cruz won't need to be outthinking the guy, because there won't be a tremendous amount to outthink. Rolly is going to do what Rolly does, try and have a punch up. I'm not saying Rolly's completely untalented in the boxing department. He has some ability, but like I say, I don't see him turning into a back foot boxer. So who do I think is going to win? I'm going to go for Pitbull Cruz to stop Rolly in the middle rounds, 6, 7, 8, something like that. That middle third of the fight. I think Rolly will be game. He'll throw his usual punches with mean intentions. They'll sort of ping off Cruz. Cruz hasn't shown a bad chin at all in the past, quite the contrary. Rolly looks a bit wobbly when you hit him cleanly. Certainly Barroso put him on the floor. I don't know whether that was called a knockdown. Was it not considered a knockdown? But I thought it was a knockdown. I keep getting back to Barroso because I'm so pissed off about that result. Anyway, I see Isaac Cruz winning this fight. I'll say 8 rounds. 8 rounds. I'll go with 8 rounds. Grinding Rolly down. Rolly will be game. I know he talks a lot of bollocks, but he is actually quite a game kid. By the way, Pitbull's only 25. He might be one of those guys who sort of matures early. But, I see him stopping Rolly. I see him and becoming WBA super lightweight champ. And hopefully he'll give Barroso first shot if he does win. Or if Rolly pulls off what would be considered an upset, even though he's a champ, I hope he gives Barroso a rematch, because he should do. Barroso deserves it. Anyway, what do you think? Who do you think wins? What do you think of Rolly? Is he as bad as some people say, or is he underrated? Maybe you think he's a bit underrated. I actually think he's a little bit underrated, Rolly, a little bit, probably because he gets so much flack. But Pitbull Cruz does what he says on the tin. Can box a bit, but as a shorter guy, 5'4", likes to have a row, likes to get in close, likes to let his punches go and outwork a guy and outman a guy and be very physical. Let me know what you think. Comments below. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the like button as well. That'd be nice. Support the channel. Spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. All right, guys and girls, I'll catch you later. Bye for now.